Good mythical afternoon, and may the 4th be with you. Today is Star Wars Day, and this is the Civil War, the Battles, Part 2 of a 2-part series about the Civil War. As always, write down your notes in here to make it a little bit more easier for you to understand what's going on. There will be a flaw question on this one, unlike Part 1, and it's actually embedded in the middle of this one. So you do need to pay attention and listen, because it's not at the end like usual. So, thank you for that kind of little hint from some of my students in my 5th and 1st period class. You guys are awesome. As always, this is the Civil War, the Battles, Chapter 16 and 17, Part 2. Write this down. Pay attention. Please, piece of paper, pen, whatever, pencil, whatever you used to write with, write it down. And then at the end, there is a vlog question embedded in here. And down in the doobly-doo, please answer this before the due date. And as always, have a great day. So, let's start. So we're going to talk about emancipation. Because of the win of Antietam, Lincoln gives out what's known as the Emancipation Proclamation, with urging from a gentleman named Frederick Douglass. And what the Emancipation Proclamation does, it frees all slaves in the Confederacy only in the states under rebellion. Not all in the U.S., not in the border states, just the ones in the Confederacy only. And what this does is weakens the Confederacy position both at home and overseas. So why didn't he not ban slavery everywhere? Because the Constitution won't allow it. This can only be used as a military power, not as an executive power. You'd have to have the legislative branch change the law or add an amendment to the Constitution to ban it. But as the commander-in-chief, things under rebellion, things that he's fighting with, he has control over how that is made and what they do, how their governments are set up, so he gets rid of it. We're actually going to look at this a little bit more in class also. This freed very few slaves, but gives a new cause to the Civil War, the liberation of slaves. And if you remember the beginning of the Civil War, the whole reason was to make sure the Union didn't collapse. That was the reason that Lincoln fought the war. And now with the Emancipation Proclamation, he brings a moral and ethical part to this war. It's not only about saving the Union, it's also about liberating all of the slaves that were the underlying current of the Civil War in the first place. Most Northerners supports this, except for the Democrats. The Confederacy's enraged because they're like, how are you going to allow the pieces of property to go free when you have no power over me because you are in a different country? Because you got to remember, the Confederacy seceded, so for the Southerners' point of view, the Confederacy is its own nation. But for the Union point of view, their place is under rebellion. So we've got that conflict. And this what also the Emancipation Proclamation does, it allows African Americans to enlist in the Union Army, which lots and lots of them did, including the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. And the Battle of Gettysburg, 1863. Prior to this, Stonewall Jackson dies of pneumonia, so Lee's greatest general is dead. And what happens is Lee moves into Pennsylvania, and he wants to stop factories from making stuff for the Northern Army. And so all these reinforcements are called off. First it starts with the North brings a little bit, then the South brings a little bit, and then it slowly but surely more and more and more start coming. And after 3 days, there's over 990,000 Union soldiers versus 75,000 Confederates. That's huge. Can you imagine that many people fighting? That's insane. And what happens is Lee sends one of his colonels, Pickett, to charge the Union defense. This was an epic failure. First of all, the Unions were on top of a small hill, and they had barricades, and they were entrenched. They had more people, and so the Confederacy was fighting uphill with less people, fighting a Union who's entrenched on top of a hill with more people. This was an epic fail. This did not work at all. Lee made a massive mistake here. The Confederate retreat, but the Union still did not follow them, and that's the problem. Why is the Union not following the Confederacy when they win a battle? And that is such a problem. The Union wins. The death toll for the Union's 23,000, the Confederate 28,000. And at this time, he gives the Gettysburg Address, which, guess what? We're going to do in class. From there, we get to the Siege of Vicksburg, July of 1863. U.S. General Grant, who's still in the West, defeats the Confederates at Vicksburg. It takes 3 months, but the Union finally defeats the last Confederate stronghold on the Mississippi. So now the Mississippi is under Union control and the Confederacy is officially cut in half. If you remember from the last vlog, I asked you, why is controlling New Orleans so important? Because it's at the delta of the Mississippi. Everything from the interior of the United States and the Confederacy has to go through the Mississippi or around it or over it or some way near it. And now that the Union completely controls it, the Confederacy cannot bring troops from the east to the west or from the west to the east or goods or anything. And that is massive. Oh, by the way, before I forget, here's your vlog question. Out of Battle Part 1 and the Battles Part 2, what do you think is the most decisive battle or speech that we discussed in these two PowerPoints or vlogs or lectures or however you like to say it? There are some more that will be after this. I just wanted to tell you now what I'm thinking about because, as I said, I wanted it embedded in it, not at the end. So this is Sherman's Total War. March 1864, Grant's given command of all Union armies, and Grant gives General William Tecumseh Sherman the go-ahead to push from Tennessee to Atlanta and then to the Atlantic Ocean. This is known as Sherman's March to the Sea, and he uses this idea called total war or scorched earth policy, depending on what type of text you're looking at. And what scorched earth or total war is when you destroy everything that could be used for war making. That includes factories, farms, people's houses, cities, towns, property, railroads. What would actually happen, Sherman would take the railroads, heat them, and then tie them around trees and knots, and they would call Sherman bow ties. And he destroys everything in his path from Tennessee to Atlanta. And instead of him having this huge supply line, what he does, he sends out people to forage for food. For the North, people love this, but for the South, this is considered the worst act of the war because they are literally destroying their homes. Not just trying to get political control, but trying to also get economic control. He captures and burns Atlanta to the ground in December of 1864. Sherman makes it to Savannah and delivers the city to Lincoln as a Christmas gift. His march is officially over. This allows Lincoln to be reelected in 1864. When he captures Atlanta and when Sherman makes it to the sea, it's more or less over for the Confederacy. Their whole area is burning. They have no food. About 50% of the men are casualties of war. By the way, this is what Atlanta looks like. This is actually a picture of Atlanta after Sherman burns down most of Atlanta. This is actually the Grand Central Station where the only major railroad hub in the South was located. And he destroys it and burns it to the ground. It looks a lot like World War I or World War II to me, with how the buildings are destroyed and how it just looks absolutely horrible. And this is what it looked like all around the South. Not just in Atlanta. The whole South is starting to look like this. And when we look at that, no wonder the Southerners got so upset and so annoyed with what happened during the Civil War. I mean, it was utterly destroyed by the North. You know, but at the same time, you look from the Northern point of view, these are people who fought against the will of the people, who tried to break and secede from the Union, and this also now is a war to free the slaves. So it becomes a massive push. Grant's Virginia campaign. As Sherman's marching from Tennessee all the way across to Atlanta, across to the Atlantic Ocean, Grant is up in Virginia, chasing Lee all over the place, steadily moving towards Richmond, the capital. Richmond gets surrounded by Grant on April 3rd of 1865, and Richmond is captured. More or less, Lee has a decision to make. He can either protect the capital or save his army. And he chooses to save his army, because without the army, he can't fight. Without the capital, the politicians and stuff can just move. And this really is another one of those things that destroyed the morale of the South. Because the South, the rebels, the Confederacy, the CSA, or the Gray, all are looking around and their cities are being burnt. There's Union soldiers rampaging all over the place. The slaves are more or less being freed and chasing people around. They're joining the army. Some are just trying to escape to the north. You know, it's very interesting and gets very chaotic in the South. So as Lee flees westward, Grant keeps chasing him and chasing him and chasing him. Every time Lee tries to turn, Grant turns. Every time Lee tries to turn, Grant turns, and he keeps going around in a circle chasing this guy. And finally, they get to Appomattox Courthouse, and Lee surrenders to Grant at the courthouse. More or less, they said Lee is there to rest. Next thing he knows, he gets up in the morning. Grant is completely surrounding his camp, and he has two choices: surrender or allow his men to be killed and destroyed. And so he surrenders to Grant, and what Grant does, he actually is very gentlemanly, like in this way. He allows the soldiers to take their belongings, their horses, and he even gives them food from his own commissary, from his own supply train, to feed these starving Confederate soldiers and generals. And this more or less ends the Civil War. And what will happen is Reconstruction will begin shortly. We'll look at that a little bit because it's actually for U.S. History 2 in 10th grade. So we're going to look at the legacy of the war. We're going to look at what happens afterwards. We're going to look at some of the constitutional amendments at a later date, either during class or during vlogs. Please make sure, as always, that you went back, and as you listen to this, you wrote down the question that needed to be answered down in the doobly-doo. Please make sure that you write it in complete sentences and you do not copy and you get it turned in on time. And as always, have a great day.